Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going deep on something really vital, the health of forests, and why we as humans have such a huge responsibility for the environment.
Yeah, this is a big one.
It is. And we've got a text here that lays out 7 super compelling arguments for why this all falls on us.
7 reasons.
7 big reasons. And it's a really fascinating mix of like the big picture stuff and then some really concrete examples. I mean, obviously we know we need forests for clean air and water.
Yeah,
Right.
sure.
Like that's pretty basic.
Right.
But did you know that the choices we make every single day, they directly impact biodiversity and they also impact climate change?
Right.
Like those two are connected to what's happening with forests.
Absolutely.
So yeah, let's unpack all of this.
Yeah, let's dive in.
Okay, so right off the bat, this text jumps into how humans have become what it calls environmental transformers.
Yeah, it's fascinating how the text just comes right out and says that we are environmental transformers.
Like we've reshaped the planet. And not always in good ways. Uh, there's some pretty hard-hitting examples in here about deforestation.
Right, like clearing land for agriculture.
Exactly. Huge areas for things like cattle ranching or soybean production.
Yeah, or sprawling urban areas, like just taking over natural habitats. It's large-scale transformation of the planet.
It really is. And the text uses the word modification a lot.
Modification.
Yeah, like it really wants to emphasize how much technology and development have allowed us to kind of reshape the entire world.
Well, and it makes you think because the same power that got us into this mess could also be the key to getting us out of it.
Oh, so it's not all doom and gloom.
Not necessarily. The text points out that we have this incredible ability not just to change things, but to manage them, restore them, create ecosystems that actually work.
Okay, so there is some hope then.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There are so many examples of humans using their ingenuity to make a positive impact on the environment. It's actually really inspiring when you start looking into it.
Okay, so give me some examples then. What are we talking about here?
Well, think about communities coming together to restore damaged forests, or people developing renewable energy sources, figuring out how to get off fossil fuels for good.
Right.
Or even something as simple as implementing more sustainable farming practices. All of these things are making a difference.
Okay, I like that. That's a good jumping off point.
Yeah.
So next, this text explores the need for managing resources. Like how do we use what forests provide, but also make sure they're around for, future generations?
Right. Because forests provide so much of what we need to live clean air, water, the raw materials we use every day.
It's a direct link between the health of the planet and our own well-being.
Exactly. And it raises a huge question. How do we balance using those essential resources with the need to conserve them?
It's like a constant balancing act.
Right. It is.
Speaking of balance, let's talk about biodiversity.
Yes, biodiversity.
I mean, the variety of life you find in a forest is just mind-blowing.
It is. It's breathtaking.
But all of that is under threat.
Right. Oh, absolutely. The text makes it clear that biodiversity isn't just about pretty flowers and cute animals.
Right.
It's about healthy ecosystems. It's the foundation.
It all works together.
Exactly. Each species, no matter how small, plays a vital role in the whole system. And losing even one can trigger a domino effect across the entire ecosystem.
It's like a giant puzzle. You take away one piece and suddenly the whole thing falls apart.
That's a great analogy.
So what are some of the ways people are addressing this? Like what are the most effective conservation efforts you've seen?
Well, there are a lot of encouraging initiatives out there.
Yeah.
Things like wildlife corridors.
Right.
These connect fragmented habitats so animals can move freely and populations can stay healthy.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And then you have anti-poaching patrols, obviously working to protect endangered species.
Yes, yeah.
And there are some really inspiring community-based conservation programs where local people are taking the lead in protecting their own forests.
That's awesome. So there is hope.
Oh, absolutely. These efforts are making a real difference on the ground.
Okay, so it feels like in some places we're finally starting to take this seriously.
I think so.
But then there's this other big issue that the text tackles head on, and that's climate change.
Yeah, this is where the link between human actions and the planet's health becomes impossible to ignore.
Right. It's like we can't deny it anymore.
Exactly. The text lays it all out. Deforestation, burning fossil fuels, all of these activities release massive amounts of greenhouse gases, and that's what's driving global warming.
And of course, on the flip side, forests are these amazing carbon sinks.
Right. They pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere.
So it's like a double whammy. We damage forest, which releases more carbon, which makes climate change worse, which makes it harder for forests to survive in the first place.
Precisely. It's a complex, interconnected system.
Hmm.
And that's why it's so important to understand this whole web of consequences if we want to find lasting solutions.
So it's not just about planting more trees.
It's about changing our behavior on a fundamental level.
And the text really dives into the moral and ethical side of all of this, like the whole idea of our responsibility to future generations.
Yeah, this is where the conversation moves beyond pure science and into the realm of values.
Right. It's not just about data and facts.
Exactly. The text argues that with our intelligence and ability to shape the planet, we have a moral obligation to protect it. Not just for ourselves, but for those who come after us.
It's like, are we leaving behind a habitable planet or not?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is. This is heavy stuff.
It is. It's about intergenerational justice.
Intergenerational justice.
Yeah, it's this concept that challenges us to ask, what kind of world do we want to leave as our legacy? Do we want to be remembered as the generation that depleted the Earth's resources? Or the one that found a way to live in balance with nature?
Those are some pretty profound questions.
They are.
This whole deep dive has been full of profound questions.
That's a good thing, though. It means we're thinking deeply about these issues.
That's true. So, okay, let's shift gears a bit. The next thing the text talks about is education and environmental awareness.
Ah, yes. This is so crucial.
It is. It's like empowering people with knowledge so they can make informed choices.
Exactly. The text argues that raising awareness about the role forests play promoting sustainable practices and inspiring action, all of these are critical steps towards creating a healthier planet.
So are we doing enough to get this message out there?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, there are so many incredible organizations and movements dedicated to protecting forests and educating the public, but are we reaching everyone?
That's what I'm wondering. Like, are we just preaching to the choir?
Yeah, that's a real danger. We need to find ways to connect with people who might not already be on board with these ideas. People who maybe don't fully understand the urgency of the situation.
Right, or who feel overwhelmed by the scale of the problem.
Exactly. It's about finding the right language, the right stories to connect with people on a personal level.
So it's about making it real for people.
It is.
Okay, I like that. So let's move on to the final point in this text. It brings us full circle back to us humans. And it's all about our dependence on nature.
Ah, yes. This is a powerful one.
It is. It's like a reminder that we're not separate from nature. We need it. We rely on it for everything.
For everything. Our food, our water, the air we breathe, even the materials we use to build our homes. It all comes from the natural world, and forests play a huge role in that.
It's so easy to forget that in our modern lives. We're so disconnected from where things come from.
That's a good point. And that disconnect can lead to a dangerous sense of detachment, like we're somehow above it all.
Right, like it doesn't affect us.
But the reality is that by harming forests, we're ultimately harming ourselves.
So sustainable practices, responsible forestry, reducing our carbon footprint, all of that. It's not just some abstract concept.
Yeah, it's essential for our own well-being.
It's about saving ourselves.
Exactly. It's time to move beyond this outdated idea of humans versus nature and embrace the reality that we are interconnected.
We are all connected.
Yes, our fate is tied to the fate of the planet. And that includes the health of our forests.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the challenges facing forests and the reasons why human actions have such a huge impact. But this is just the beginning of our deep dive.
Right, we've laid the groundwork. Now it's time to get into some real-world examples.
Exactly. So stay tuned because in the next part, we'll be exploring specific cases of how humans are impacting forests, both positively and negatively.
We'll be looking at everything from deforestation to sustainable forestry practices, from indigenous knowledge to the role of technology in protecting these vital ecosystems.
So buckle up because it's going to be a fascinating ride.
I can't wait.
Me neither.
All right, so let's get into some real-world examples here. Let's actually see how humans are impacting forests. Because we've talked about the why now, let's talk about the how.
Yeah, okay, I'm ready for that. Where should we start?
Well, we have to talk about deforestation.
Right, okay, yeah.
I mean, it's one of the biggest threats to forests globally.
It is.
And the Amazon rainforest is a prime example.
The Amazon.
Yeah. It's often called the lungs of the planet because of its incredible ability to absorb carbon dioxide.
Right.
But it's been under intense pressure from human activities for decades.
Yeah, and agriculture is a huge part of that.
It is.
Yeah.
Especially large-scale agriculture, things like cattle ranching and soybean production.
Yeah, we see that a lot. Clearing land for those purposes.
Right. And it's not just about the trees that are lost.
Right.
I mean, obviously that's a huge problem. But clearing land releases a ton of carbon into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And it destroys habitats, threatens biodiversity, throws the whole ecosystem out of balance.
Like it's a chain reaction.
It is.
Hmm.
And the impacts go even further. Think about soil erosion.
Oh, yeah.
When you remove the trees, the soil is exposed to wind and rain.
Right.
It gets washed away. And that can lead to all sorts of problems like water scarcity changes and local weather patterns.
Like the land can't hold water anymore.
Exactly. It's like this ripple effect spreading outward from the initial deforestation.
So what can we actually do about this? Like, how do we turn things around?
Well, there are a lot of different approaches being implemented.
Mm-hmm.
One is government policies to protect forests.
Okay, so like laws and regulations.
Yeah, exactly. Setting aside protected areas, creating incentives for conservation.
Makes sense.
And then there's sustainable forestry practices.
Okay, what does that look like?
Well, it's about managing forests in a way that takes into account the long-term ecological impact.
Okay, so not just cutting down everything in sight.
No, it's about finding a balance. One example is reduced impact logging, or RIL.
RIL.
Yeah. It's a method where only certain trees are harvested, and they do it in a way that minimizes damage to the surrounding environment.
Oh, so it's like selective logging.
Exactly. And then you have programs like the Forest Stewardship Council certification.
FSC.
Yeah. You've probably seen that label on wood products.
I think so.
It basically assures consumers that the wood they're buying comes from responsibly managed forests.
So it's a way for people to make more informed choices.
Exactly. And then there are even more innovative approaches like agroforestry.
Agroforestry. What's that?
It's a really cool concept. It's about integrating trees into agricultural systems.
Oh, interesting. So like planting trees alongside crops.
Yeah, exactly. It provides shade for the crops, it prevents soil erosion, and it can even boost biodiversity.
So it's a win-win.
It is. It's about working with nature instead of against it.
I like that. So the text also talks about the role of indigenous communities in forest conservation.
Yeah, this is so important.
It is. It's like they've been doing sustainable forestry for centuries.
Exactly. Indigenous peoples have lived in and around forests for generations. They have this deep understanding of the ecosystem and how to live in harmony with it.
Right.
Their traditional practices often emphasize sustainability and respect for the interconnectedness of all living things.
Like they have so much knowledge to share.
They do. And thankfully, there's a growing movement to incorporate indigenous knowledge into modern conservation efforts.
Oh, that's great. Can you give me an example of what that looks like?
Sure. In some areas, indigenous communities are the ones on the front lines protecting their forests from illegal logging and mining.
Wow.
They're also leading efforts to restore degraded forests using their traditional ecological knowledge to guide the work.
That's amazing. So it's about recognizing their role as stewards of the land.
Absolutely. And
Nice.
empowering them to continue that stewardship.
I like that. Okay, so I want to switch gears a bit and talk about something a little different. Urban forests.
Urban forests.
Yeah, we often think of forests as being, out in the wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the trees and green spaces in our cities?
Ah, I see what you mean. Yeah. Urban forests are incredibly important.
They are.
They might not be these vast expanses of wilderness, but they play a vital role in making our cities livable.
Right. Like I know I feel better when I'm around trees, even if it's just a small park in the middle of the city.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of research showing that spending time in nature has positive effects on our mental and physical well-being.
It's like we have this innate need to connect with the natural world.
We do. And in a world that's becoming increasingly urbanized, creating and maintaining urban forests is more important than ever.
It is.
And it's not just about aesthetics.
Right.
Urban forests help improve air quality, reduce noise, even combat the urban heat island effect.
The urban heat island effect.
Yeah, it's this phenomenon where cities are significantly warmer than surrounding areas because of all the concrete and asphalt.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
But trees can help mitigate that.
So it's like bringing the forest to us.
Exactly. And it's something that everyone can participate in, Plant a tree in your yard, volunteer to clean up a local park.
Yeah.
Even just appreciate the beauty of nature in your neighborhood.
Those are all good things.
They are. Every little bit helps.
All right, so we've talked about the problems facing forests, but this last part of our deep dive is about solutions. And the text highlights some incredibly innovative approaches being developed to protect and restore these vital ecosystems. It's pretty inspiring stuff.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see how human ingenuity can be applied to these complex problems.
So let's start with something that I think always captures the imagination: drones. I mean, who doesn't love a good drone story?
Yeah.
But seriously, they're proving to be real game changers in the world of reforestation.
Yeah, the text explains how drones can plant trees much faster and more efficiently than traditional methods,
Right.
especially in areas that are difficult to access.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense.
Like, think about steep mountainsides or places that have been devastated by
It's
wildfires.
like something out of a sci-fi movie. These swarms of drones flying over a barren landscape, scattering seeds like little airborne gardeners.
Yeah, it might sound futuristic, but it's happening right now. There are companies using drones to plant thousands, even millions of trees in a fraction of the time it would take using conventional methods.
That's wild. And it's not just planting. The text also talks about how artificial intelligence is revolutionizing the way we monitor forests.
Right. It's about using technology to keep a watchful eye on these vast ecosystems.
So we can actually see what's happening in real time.
We can, with AI and satellite imagery, we can track deforestation, identify illegal logging activities, even predict areas that are at high risk of fire or disease outbreaks.
Oh, wow.
And this data is so valuable, it helps inform conservation efforts and allows policymakers to make better decisions.
It's like having a digital guardian angel watching over the forests.
Yeah, exactly.
And speaking of tech, the text mentions blockchain, which I usually associate with cryptocurrency, not trees.
Yeah, it's true that blockchain is best known for its role in digital currencies, but its potential applications go far beyond that.
Okay, so how does it apply to forests?
Well, imagine being able to track a piece of wood all the way back to the forest it came from.
Oh, wow.
Blockchain can create a transparent and tamper-proof record of where timber comes from, and that helps to combat illegal logging.
Oh, I see. So it's about creating a system where consumers can be sure that the wood products they buy are coming from sustainably managed forests.
Exactly. It's about transparency and accountability throughout the supply chain.
That's really cool. Okay, so what about genetic engineering?
Yeah. That's a more controversial approach.
It is.
But the text does explore how this technology could potentially be used to create trees that are more resistant to pest diseases or even climate change.
Okay, that sounds promising on the surface. But are there risks involved with genetically modifying trees?
Definitely. There are concerns about the potential long-term ecological impacts. We just don't know how these modified trees might interact with the rest of the ecosystem.
Right, so we could be creating unintended consequences.
Exactly. It's a complex issue that requires careful research and responsible implementation.
So it's not a simple solution.
Not all.
All right, so for our final stop on this technological tour, the text takes us to space.
To space.
Yeah, space-based forest monitoring is becoming increasingly important.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah.
Satellites equipped with advanced sensors can provide such detailed information about forest cover tree height, even the health of individual trees.
It's amazing what we can do from up there.
It is. So we can actually monitor the well-being of forests from space.
This data is invaluable for understanding the impacts of climate change on forests, tracking deforestation, monitoring carbon stocks. It gives us a global perspective that wouldn't be possible otherwise.
That's incredible. Well, this deep dive has taken us from the depths of the forest to the far reaches of space. It's been quite a journey.
It has. And it really highlights how multifaceted this issue is. It's not just about trees. It's about interconnected ecosystems, human actions, ethical considerations, technological innovation.
And it's about our future.
It is.
So we've explored the challenges, the solutions, and the incredible ways humans are working to create a better future for forests. But this is just the beginning of the conversation.
Right. It's up to each of us to continue learning, engaging with these issues, and finding ways to make a difference in our own lives.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating and complex world of forests and humanity's responsibility for their well-being. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those conversations going.
Until next time.